If you wish to be heard this evening, please sign the speaker list provided on the table at the side of the council chamber. The chairman reserves the right to limit the amount of time each speaker has for each agenda. Ms. Green, if you would please call the roll.
Councilman Smalls, Mr. Welford,
Here.
Mr. Williford, Mr. Wilson,
Here.
Mr. Kish, Mrs. Holland, Chairwoman Bettman.
Here.
You have a quorum, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. It is possible, we have one of our commissioners that's returning from travel who may be joining us, and we have a couple other meetings going on here at City Hall this evening where Councilman Smalls and our Ms. Holland are. So with that, agenda item 2, the approval of the minutes from the September 15, 2015 meeting. We have received the minutes. Any questions for staff? Hearing none?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the minutes and thank the staff for another fabulous job on these.
Second.
Ms. Green, if you would call the roll.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Welford,
Yes.
Chairwoman Bettman.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, the revitalization overlay application number RO122015, conceptual plan reapproval, Hawthorne Place 9007 Marshall Avenue, filed by C.S. Hawthorne for recommendation to the mayor and city council.
Good evening. An ordinance to reapprove the revitalization overlay area number 1 conceptual site plan for Hawthorne Place development with conditions, ordinance number 1853. We're seeking approval. The applicant received approval in 2007 to construct a mixed-use development known as Hawthorne Place. The property is zoned IG, which stands for Industrial General. The site will consist of 3 phases, and they received final site plan approval in 2008. So simply, the reason why they're here tonight is because they're seeking reapproval of the project since construction didn't begin in a timely manner. It expired. So what they're proposing to do is raise an existing 55,000 square foot trucking terminal, which sits on approximately 11 acres, and construct what was approved, which consists of 1,006 residential units and 1,466 parking spaces. The site will also have 1,039,000 square feet of office space and approximately 2,500 square feet of commercial space as well. The site will also consist of a daycare center, have 1.8 acres of green space, courtyards, a pool, a state-of-the-art wellness fitness center, a theater, dog park, and other amenities. The site will also contain a 6-story parking garage. Hawthorne Place will have access points to the site, one entrance off of Staggers Road and 2 off of Marshall Avenue. The proposed project is also in close proximity to the Main Street business area and the MARC train stop station. Based on the project's phasing schedule, this project will be phased in over an 8-year time period, and the applicant, if approved, will immediately seek phase 1 approval to consist of 303 multifamily residential units. It is recommended that the Planning Commission recommend to the Mayor and City Council revitalization overlay application number RO1-215 Hawthorne Place concept plan is approved with the conditions in the revised technical staff report. The applicant has a PowerPoint presentation they would like to show after you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for staff before we go through the presentation? The only question I have, Christian, does the applicant have the revised technical report that we have?
The conditions,
Technical
yes.
staff report?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Okay, hearing none, we'll hear from the applicant. Welcome, if you would please state your name and address.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission.
If it's green, you're good. Smack it, Sarah. Those work different.
Sarah, will Fred's work if we unplug it?
No, it's wireless.
Will the camera pick up if we move this up to the front here, because this one's on?
There should be some extra.
Working? Thank you for your patience. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you
Okay,
again,
welcome.
Commissioners. For the record, William Shipp with the law offices of O'Malley, Miles, Nylon, and Gilmore here tonight on behalf of the applicant. We're happy to be here to present this request for reapproval of the conceptual site plan. Essentially, this project went through full review with the city and the city council originally, and it was a very cooperative process with a lot of good input from the city and the community, and we were happy to get to the point where it was approved. And then, of course, with the downturn in the market, things didn't quite go as planned. We have a new owner, CS Hawthorne, who's the applicant here tonight. They are prepared to move this project forward, have been working with your staff for a number of months to get this project jump-started. And that's where the awareness of needing to recertify or reapprove the plan came, and we've been in the process of doing that for the last couple of months. We've been, of course, before your city council on the work session process and the introduction, and we're here tonight to present to you. I want to say that we've been very pleased with the efforts and the cooperation we've gotten from your staff in pulling this application together. As always, a pleasure to work in the city, and we're happy to be back here tonight. Before I go through the PowerPoint, I want to say that the approach that we've taken is to try to essentially submit what was approved before, to try to eliminate any potential for controversy by asking for anything different than what was approved. We did have some conversation because in the intervening time period, the city now has a new affordable housing ordinance, and whether we would request a bump in the number of units to cover that requirement. But to keep it simple and to keep it non-controversial from the issues of parking and traffic, we've stayed with the request of the original approval, which was 1,006 units. We did not increase the number of units. So therefore, the impacts on infrastructure and parking did not increase with this proposal. If we could go to the next slide. We just have a couple slides that'll show you nothing that you don't already know. Proximity of the site to the surrounding region, including the MARC station in 95. We think it's an ideally suited property, both for connection to the city of Laurel's new revitalization area, but also to Fort Meade and all the things that are going on around us. Next slide. These are some things that are meant to kind of depict the vision of the R01 zone. As you know, the overlay, this is one of the primary overlay zones in the city, and you have great energy going with the new town center on the west side of Route 1. And we are hopeful that by getting some activity going on this side of Route 1, which would essentially remove a vacant industrial building and convert it into active living and community space, that it will help solidify the energy that's going on economically with the town center and balance out the R01 area. Next slide. And so we're integrating with the existing fabric of the city. We're using the existing streets that are in this vicinity. We're upgrading them per your code to not only ensure adequate vehicular access, but pedestrian connections as well. A lot of this was already addressed in the first approval, and we're just carrying forward implementation. Thanks, Sarah. Again, we're close to the MARC train. This is an underutilized site. It's essentially 100% developed and pervious. It is what we would call a redevelopment of almost a brownfield area. So for a lot of reasons, it's a good site to do something on. And next slide. This is some examples of some of the development in the area, which of course you're aware of, but we use the same slide presentation when we went out to the market as to our lenders and financing folks. The more, you can see the site plan superimposed on an aerial, next slide. Closer up, bird's eye view of the existing site, you can see how much of it is paved, virtually the whole thing. And we'll be converting this into a more up-to-date, code compliant and environmentally friendly site. Next. So the conceptual site plan has a number of phases. There's actually 3 phases. Buildings B, C, and D in the front or bottom edge of that slide is the first phase, which is what we intend to get started on immediately. That's multifamily with some commercial space of 2,500 square feet included on the ground floor. And then in the back, we have 2 of the buildings, E and F, I believe, are phase 2, and then G and A would be phase 3. Building A is labeled as the office building, and that would be commercial use, could be, depending on market, perhaps talked about a hotel or some other use, but the original approval and this approval talked about if the market dictates that building could be jump-started in the phasing. And of course, we'd be back with your staff and with you to talk about that eventuality if it were to occur. And would, of course, require a detailed site plan approval. Here's another view of the rendering of the site at total build-out. Again, it's 1,006 units, 139,000 approximately of commercial space. It's filling in an existing gray field area. We're walkable, tree-lined, inviting areas within the site, courtyards, which would be used for pedestrian-oriented activity. And one of the things that, well, we have a list of sustainable features that we'd be including in the project as well, and we're keeping going forward with those. And we added, at the request of one of the council members, I believe, the charging station concept for electric cars, which has, of course, come on since the first approval, and we're happy to include that in the site. Right. Sarah, could you go back? Let's go back this slide. The one thing that I want to point out is a major difference from this application and the prior application was in the prior proposal, the pool facility wasn't going to come until phase 2 when one of those larger buildings in the back got built. And now we've moved it up to phase 1, and you can see it there on the podium between building C and D, the blue area. So that would be included in an amenity space with phase 1 because we wanted to jump that up so we had that amenity available for residents when they move into the project from phase 1 on. Again, these are some different views of the elevations from different points of view, Marshall Avenue, and then as if you were standing on Route 1 and looking in the background, have build out, you could see the building above. Next. This is in the interior of the site. There's a road that cuts through, private road that cuts through the center of the property, and this is what the streetscape interior to the project was. Next. And then we have some slides that show you the type of interior finishes and depict the level of quality we envision in the project throughout. Lots of tenant amenity space, lots of enhanced fenestrations for the lobby areas, like the meeting rooms, theaters. Next slide. You can back up one. This shows you, again, the phasing. The purple being the phase 1, which we would propose to get moving on right away as soon as we get a detailed site plan approved, hopefully with your approval. And then that's the 303 units in about a 5-story configuration on a podium type parking. The site is entirely parked, self-contained on site, and each phase will be evaluated for the parking that goes with it, so that even if, say, within phase 2 we built one of the 2 buildings, we would have to make sure that we built enough of the podium parking for that phase to park the first building, and then the second building could come on. And that's all been calculated, but would be looked at closer when we get to a detailed site plan for each phase. The first phase would be built as a continuous phase of construction, with the podium being constructed, I think, starting with building D? Starting with D and then building through to building B. So that gives you an idea of the progression of the construction as we see. So we might have people moving into building D as we're working on building C and B. But as they lease up, of course, all the amenity space and everything associated, and the parking, of course, related to that building would have to be completed. I do want, that's the overview of the PowerPoint that we have that shows you the project. Again, many of these slides come right from the original approval, and that's intentional because we didn't want to throw any curveballs in there, that we updated it. The main thing being pulling that swimming pool to the first phase, which is a big change for the recreational component. I think it's a good change. We have reviewed the technical staff report, been working with your staff on that. We agree with most of the conclusions and the recommendations in the report, including one thing you'll note in terms of updates is that there are some road improvements or pedestrian improvements that were contemplated with the original approval that the city has since, in the intervening years, gone ahead and actually installed some of them. And there's provisions in your staff report to require a contribution back from the developer to reimburse the city for some of that work. And we have no objection to those conditions. The conditions that we have some question about, and we are working with your staff on, are conditions 33 and 34, which contemplate an impact fee related to additional police and housing inspector resources. We certainly noted the memorandum that was submitted on that with the calculations. There was a similar memorandum on the public safety issues with the first approval, and there was no condition regarding these items on the first approval. And we would request that it not be included in this approval. I would note that as a basis for our argument on that, besides the precedent of the fact that it wasn't done before, is that there is a public safety surcharge that's imposed by the county, as you're aware, and that on phase one alone will exceed $2 million. And so I understand the city gets half of that payment. And so at $1 million plus, we believe it covers these items that were addressed in the memorandum. They are important for the city to track in terms of resources. And certainly we're looking forward to having further discussions with your staff about it as we hopefully get closer to approvals with your recommendation, with the city council's final approval. But I did want to note for the record that we are still working on 33 and 34. And we do have some reservations, but other than those two conditions, we are in complete agreement with the staff report and the other conditions listed in your staff's report. With that, we're pleased. I have the whole team here of consultants. They're all available if we have questions that I need to go to them on, and we are here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Ship.
Thank you.
Questions for the applicant? Mr. Wilson.
So relative to 33 and 34, if we approve this tonight with the technical staff report in this form, then that'll send you back to negotiate it with staff and then have to bring it back to us? Is that,
It can go,
I'm just,
Your recommendation is merely a recommendation, and if the council saw fit, when it gets to them, they can change the condition.
okay.
And it would be up to them as to whether they send it back or not, but I doubt if they'd send it back for another
Okay,
hearing.
I just want to make
so-
sure that we understand that.
And I just wanted to put it on the record as a placeholder that we were still
Right.
having that conversation.
And I just want to validate with staff that we do get half of the public safety.
Yes,
We don't get any, obviously, of the school
no.
one, but okay. And just one other question, I think more for staff, I apologize. The calculation on parking is based on what multiple? Is it 1.75?
Yeah, I think it,
Just want to make sure we're consistent across these.
The parking breakdown for the requirements for a one-bedroom apartment is based on the 1.75. Two-bedroom is 2.5. The three-bedroom is 3.5. However, they do have one building that's going to have commercial space in there, and for that building, it'll be calculated at 2 spaces per unit,
Per commercial unit,
per residential unit.
per residential unit, but
With-
then there's no kicker on it for the commercial space.
No.
Okay.
I believe the blended rate for the residential is about 1.3.
In aggregate.
And it's different depending on the bedrooms. And then I think the office has its own calculation based on the square footage. The site is designed, especially with the ultimate parking garage that would be in the back to cover both the commercial office and all of the residential. I believe the total is about 1,400 parking spaces.
Let me just ask another set of questions relative to the floodplain map.
Yeah.
Where are we on that? What mitigations? I mean, I know it'll obviously all get worked out. I'm just curious though.
Yeah, we are, again, using the same approvals and approach that we're taking with the original stormwater management review of the project. And that's why this property is built on podium parking, which means
Oh,
all
that's
of the
good.
residential, all the occupied space will be out of the floodplain. And so parking would be on the ground level, and then there's a podium, and all the buildings are built on top of the podium.
So although the floodplain map changed in the intervening years, the design still holds? Is that true?
My engineer indicates yes.
So the engineer nodding.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the
Any
questions I have.
No, I have no questions. I did have, as I looked through the application, many questions came to mind, but as I finished through it, every single thing concern I had was answered by staff thoroughly.
Thank you. I had just a question in terms of the entire segment. It's referred to as residential, and then I see we talk about the inspector. Is this all rental property? Is there, are any of the phases owned property, or will the entire, I'm
Certainly,
sorry.
all of phase one is rental.
Okay,
And I believe the entire residential component is, at this point, envisioned to be rental, although if the market were to evolve,
okay.
later buildings could be considered for condo, but we don't know that until we get to that point.
Thank you. And I would just like to share, Councilman Smalls, as I stated earlier, has a meeting, and I spoke to him prior to his leaving just to see if he had any points or anything to share. And for both agenda items that we're talking about tonight, he just wanted to make sure that if we as a commission agree, and I certainly agree, but that we also share that to the extent that it's possible and feasible to, throughout this process, to consider local, women-owned and minority-owned businesses as you develop and work through this property, and that would be greatly appreciated.
And I appreciate the comment. He did make the comment at the work session, and we said we'd work with the city to get the word out for any job fairs, possible, openings for local and minority businesses.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? I have no one else signed up to speak, and we're making recommendations, so I don't need a public hearing on it. However, is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I would like to move that we approve the revitalization overlay application RO1-2-215 conceptual plan for Hawthorne Place at 9007 Marshall Avenue. That's filed by the applicant C.S. Hawthorne for recommendation to the mayor and city council, including the updated technical report from the staff, and I believe that's it.
I'll second the motion.
Ms. Green, if you would call the roll, please.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Welford?
Yes.
Chairwoman Bettman?
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Thank you all very much.
Good luck.
Moving to agenda item 4, revitalization overlay application number -1-2015, conceptual plan Laurel Shopping Center, Montrose Avenue, Fairlawn Avenue, and Washington Boulevard, filed by Federal Realty Investment Trust for recommendation to the mayor and city council.
Good evening again.
Good evening.
The applicant, Federal Realty, is seeking concept overlay approval of a revitalization overlay application R01-1 2015 with ordinance number 1848 for Laurel Shopping Center development. As you're well aware, the applicant has been before you a few times. They're proposing to demolish 52,000 square feet of commercial space for Laurel Shopping Center and construct a multifamily apartment complex with up to 180 units and 100 parking spaces associated with the site. The applicant is also seeking a parking waiver for the project. At the September meeting, it was tabled, and the commissioners, you asked that staff work with the applicant to go back and try to work out a few things and determine if the landscape island within the shopping center will be removed or if it will stay put. And the applicant decided that they will keep the island there, they will not remove it. And then you also asked for Public Works to either accept their parking study or to reject their parking study. And the Public Works submitted another memo on September 22nd, which rejected their parking study analysis. Also, you wanted to know about the Route 1 northbound U teardrop, if they were going to try to work that out. They haven't decided on that. I know that was a lot of that was contingent on if they received a tip. I'm sure Mr. Gibbs will speak more to that when he gets up. And furthermore, the commissioners wanted us to come up with a plan regarding the bus pull-off, since the site at 4th Street and Montrose Avenue will have a full signal traffic light there. And the applicant, Bowler Engineer, they came up with a bus stop, and staff and Public Works in our department, we all met, had a powwow, and it was agreed upon that the northbound mass transit bus stop shall be relocated to a point just north of Domer Avenue. The relocated bus stop shall include a bus pull-off lane as depicted in the bus rendering that was submitted in your packages. Engineering plans for the bus pull-off lane shall be submitted to the Department of Public Works for review and approval. The bus pull-off lane improvement shall also include a 5-foot wide sidewalk to be reconstructed with the necessary ADA ramp or landing pad as part of the widening work. Also, in order to accommodate the traffic signal, the 7 perpendicular parking spaces inside the shopping center on the south side of Montrose Avenue, just east of the 4th Street, shall either be removed or reoriented. Parallel spaces can be substituted. And the applicant shall provide written documentation to the city from Giant Foods to change or remove the 7 parking spaces prior to the issuance of the first use and occupancy permit for the apartments. If the applicant is not able to obtain permission, they shall provide the city an alternative solution for the parking spaces. In order to do any of the additional development of commercial space for Phase 2, which will be market-driven, they will have to come back to the Planning Commission to get a parking waiver, so staff will have the opportunity to reanalyze the parking situation at the shopping center. Since the last meeting, everybody has met and agreed upon the staff report has made some changes, and you will receive the revised conditions up there, and staff is recommending that the concept revitalization overlay application with the parking waiver be approved with the conditions in the revised technical staff report to make the motion to go to the mayor and city council for approval.
Thank you. Any questions for Christian?
Yeah, I got a couple.
Mr. Wilson?
So I just want to take you back. Was it the traffic study that was rejected or the parking study?
The traffic analysis and the parking study, the combined, they rejected both of them.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. And can you just, we've got a new piece of paper here, and I'm just trying to figure out what's
Different?
different.
The only thing that's different from what you received in your package and what you have before you is condition number 7. There's been a lot of different Public Works memorandums, so I put on there that they have to include all the changes from the April 24th, 2015 memorandum, and then from the September 22nd, 2015 memorandum. And the April 24th memorandum, just on their final site plan, they need to put a north arrow on there. They forgot to do that. And then all the changes from the September 22nd memorandum includes the bus stop and so forth.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Gibbs? Welcome.
First of all, just Edward Gibbs on behalf of Federal Realty Investment Trust. My understanding is that the study that you asked them to accept or reject was the signal warrant study. We'd be in big trouble if they rejected the parking study and the traffic study, because those two things justified the parking waiver, the parking modification, and found that the overall development would not oversaturate the applicable intersections. It was the traffic signal warrant study that you wanted them to accept or reject, because we were saying the traffic signal was not warranted under the warrants. They were saying it was, and you, in particular, Commissioner Wilson, and really everyone had concerns about it. And I know the chairman raised some concerns about, well, you know, if the island comes out, I can see where it would be warranted, but if it stays in, I'm not sure. But and so that, to me, if the city is rejecting all of our traffic studies, then we got a big problem, because there's never been a word mentioned about taking exception to our traffic impact study, which gauged the impact of the project on surrounding intersections for adequacy purposes, and the parking modification. There were some questions early on about the parking modification. We went back and revised the parking modification study. We took counsel 3 additional days. We brought them back, and everybody was okay with it. So I think we need some clarification here.
I was going to say, we do need the clarification, but the only thing that again, staff will need to clarify, but my recollection was that it did involve, I agree, the discussion was around the warrant, but some of what we did talk about was how it impacted those other intersections. So, Mr. Gibbs, I think you and I have a different recollection on that, because we were talking about what staff brought up to us the last time was that because it did not go, I believe it was a full 12 hours.
That's the warrant study.
That was all the warrant
That's all the
study.
traffic signal warrant analysis.
Chris?
I apologize, I misspoke. The Public Works memo, they did reject the signal warrant analysis, and I'll just read through the reasons why they rejected this, if you didn't
You're
have it.
okay with that? I think he's okay with that.
Okay.
He
I
just wanted to
that we
make
didn't
sure.
reject it
I
all.
apologize, my mistake.
No problem at all.
Rejected. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and first of all, let me just say at the outset, you know, I appreciate the open door and the cooperation we've had working with the staff, and I am happy that we're back here in a consensus position with the staff. Okay, so we're not arguing with anything they're recommending. I do want just one clarification. Both Mr. Brock and Ms. Pulley were very, very kind to revise condition 7 today. When I raised an issue about that to their attention. The only question I have, and I think I understand this, but we agree that we have to revise the plan in accord with the April 24th and the September 22nd Public Works memoranda. But the one question I do have is that I just want to make sure I understand on page 3 of that September 22nd memo. There's the statement in the very first paragraph, 3rd line down. It says, enhancements at the intersection will include removal of the existing street parking spaces along the east leg of Montrose Avenue prior to 4th Street. The 7 parking spaces inside the center on the south side of Montrose Avenue, just east of 4th Street, must also be removed. So when I read that, normally I would think that's 14 spaces that have to be removed, but it's just the same 7. Is that correct? Just the 7 that we had talked about.
That is correct, and as earlier as we spoke, I did state that the conditions that were in the memos are reflected in the conditions in the staff report, so it was only the 7 parking spaces that were in question, as mentioned earlier.
Just want to clarify. Thank you very much.
No problem.
The only other items that I would say are this. We have no objection to any of the conditions that are recommended in the staff report. We are at one with the staff on all those conditions. In response to the 2 issues, one with regard to the removal of the island, that was an issue a question that you posed at the last hearing. And when I was standing up here at the last hearing, I said, you know, we really have, to make our decision, we were waiting to hear from the city. Because some people were saying yes, some people were saying no, some people were saying I don't know. And at our last meeting with staff, we were told that the administration, the city had come to the consensus position that it would be wise to leave the island in place. So we're not at this point asking that the island be removed. But when I told my client about that, he said, well, I don't want to forever foreclose the opportunity to maybe come back and talk with the city about that, because there are some benefits to it. So I don't want to stand here and say, we're not ever going to ask to remove the island. I accept what the city has said. We're not asking to remove the island as part of this application. That's number one. And number two, Ms. Pulley's comment about the removal of the teardrop and the change of the access on Route 1, that is contingent on TIF.
Correct.
And, we've said that since day one. So that's our position on that one.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, let me just, thank you, Mr. Gibbs. Is there a place on this latest recommendation sheet where we can make sure we capture your concerns relative to the island? In this, it's undated, but it's the one that I just got.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that that's captured, because I agree. I mean, they could always come back and, ask to pull out the island. It's with some other process, right?
In the conditions, it's not listing about the island, however, it is talked about in the staff report. If necessary, I can make the change.
Well, what I'll do is put it in this recommendations. I'll just put I'll make it a part of the motion. Okay? And then the other question was relative to the 7 spaces. Are we clear on which memo?
We are.
Okay.
We are. We knew what 7 spaces.
Okay, it was just the way it was articulated, not.
I just had, when I just read it just now, I had a little bit of confusion in my
No,
mind.
I just want to make sure we capture that.
Yeah, we got it.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I have no one else signed up to speak on this item. If there are no further questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve revitalization overlay application R01-1-2015 conceptual plan, Laurel Shopping Center, Montrose Avenue, Fairlawn Avenue, Washington Boulevard, as filed by the applicant Federal Realty Investment Trust for recommendation to the mayor and city council, including the staff report, and with one adjustment relative to the traffic island, that the issue of the traffic island is that it's not going out at this time, but that does not preclude an adjustment at some later date back into our normal process to revisit these kinds of things on overlay plans.
Second the motion.
Thank you. Ms. Green?
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Welford,
Yes.
Chairwoman Bettman,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. And thank you all very much.
Appreciate your
Thank you for-
patience through this.
Thank you so much. We have no other business, therefore the meeting is adjourned.